and welcome to MGoRadio 8.0, the beginning of the 2022 season. I'm Brian Cook. Hello. Here's Alex Drain. Alex,
Hello.
you can talk, man. It's all
off
right.
to off to a stirring start, and Seth Fisher.
I'm ready to go. I've
All
had
right,
I've fall
co-host.
camped. The competition
Well
is
done.
is tight here.
Okay, Michigan's going to false start on its first snap, and we all know why. And so we're working through our early camp issues right now. First of all, we'd like to thank Underground Printing for making this all possible. UGP makes custom apparel such as t-shirts and sweatshirts, and was founded by two Michigan alums over 20 years ago. They have 3 retail locations in Ann Arbor and offer thousands of University of Michigan athletic products for sale, ranging from clothing to accessories and memorabilia. Check them out at ugpmichiganapparel.com or check out our selection of shirts on the mgoblogstore.com. And let's not forget our associate sponsors, Peak Wealth Management, Homeshore Lending, Ann Arbor Elder Law, Michigan Law Grad, Human Element, the Phil Klein Insurance Group, Prentice 4M, and we are coming to you via Signal Wire. All right. The Rams of Colorado have a new coach, Jay Norvell.
Colorado State.
Colorado State. Thank you. After Steve Addazio inexplicably flamed out with a team that couldn't do offense. And we've talked about this a couple times now, but they seem to have imported Nevada, which is Jay Norvell's old school, almost wholesale.
Well, 11 players, so technically you could field an entire team with the guys that they took. What they are fielding are the center, the guard, the 2 starting wide receivers, the quarterback, the backup running back, the entire special teams unit, and the only halfway decent player in the secondary.
Yeah, I mean that is pretty much quite a haul for modern college football. I mean, it's really kind of the example of the modern coaching change, right? The coach brings basically everybody with him, and what was interesting for me going through the positional groups in the preseason was, especially a wide receiver, you have a hodgepodge of Nevada guys on one hand and Colorado State guys on the other, and how they divvy up snaps between the scraps of the Addazio team and then the Norvell transfers, I think will be interesting.
Yeah, well, Sorry, go ahead.
This is, I think, a 30-point spread. So there's not a whole lot of faith in Colorado State out there amongst the bettors, and got a new coach integrating a new system. You don't really know what to expect, which I guess is a disadvantage for Michigan. But this does not on paper look like a team that should be competitive.
Not the first week. I mean, I think they probably could be like a 7-win team over the course of the season. Now, they imported enough on offense because Clay Millen was the guy that was going to start. He wasn't starting yet, but he was the guy they were grooming to start. And it's a air raid offense, so you don't really need offensive line is not completely unnecessary, but less necessary than other systems because the whole idea is getting the ball out of there before anyone can even get to you. And he's got 2 receivers from Nevada, and they actually left a couple good receivers for him too, plus a couple tight ends. They had Trey McBride last year, who was the entire offense for them. He was the first tight end taken in the draft, but Tanner Arkin is he's only got 1 catch for 9 yards, and for some reason the people in the Mountain West voted him first team preseason Mountain West. So I don't really know what's going on there. Maybe people pay attention so badly that they just okay, but they are talking about him a lot in camp. Clay Millen won the job immediately. There was no question whether he was going to be the starter. And the receivers that they brought back, Malquan Stovall is more than just a air raid little slot. He's 5'8", 185, but the guy can move. He hurdles fools. He's He makes a lot of plays downfield in traffic.
Okay, so just from the perspective of a Michigan fan, what are we looking at? What do you think we can take away from this game? Which Colorado State players are going to be matched up against which Michigan players that would actually give you some sort of indication that when we get to Maryland and Iowa, that some of our questions about the team evolve.
It's kind of a Western Michigan game last year. remember like they had the one slot receiver and like, okay, can we cover the slot receiver?
Right. Yeah. So like,
Yeah.
which Michigan players are actually going to get tested?
I mean, Rod Moore maybe.
Okay.
Because you have to run your own system. You can't approach the air raid like I'm going to do something weird. I also really want to see what happens with is Mozzie Smith really going to get upfield? Like it has to work if it's going to work, right? So like this test, this level is, can we get pressure up the middle? Because if we can't get any pressure, then that's really bad for the rest of the season. Can the linebackers, I think they're going to start Kalel Mullings in this game because Nikai Hill-Green's hurt. So, what does he look like out there? Because air raid likes to mess with your linebackers too. And they will run a quarter of the time. It's not like they just don't know how to run, period. If they just pass a lot. And then, the corners are going to get out there. I don't know if we have to learn anything more about DJ Turner, but, Jamon Green, they're going to test him. They like to throw into coverage, and they like to, they give their guy leverage, and they give their guy opportunities to go up and get it. That's Torrey Horton, number 14. So if they're going to try to get him on Jamon Green and see if Jamon doesn't flip out in the middle of in the middle of trying to defend it. And then the running backs are all receivers. They brought back last year's running back who was an Adazio special from Boston College. He was 240 pounds, and
All
that
right,
guy's third string. So,
Alex, what are you going to be looking for?
Well,
this
it'll
game?
be the first look at Will Johnson, and this is an offense that's going to pass a lot, so I think that'll be exciting. The defensive line, because they pass so much, we'll see how much we can really learn about that. I think what Seth's point is just notable here, which is that, Colorado State's a team I think it's going to be a lot better in November than they are in week one, with a first-time starter, an offensive line that's kind of being glued together through different pieces. But overall, I think for me, the linebackers, and particularly Kalel Mullings, right? If he is starting, that was our big question point in the preseason podcast, was this is a position we don't want to see an injury. Well, there's already an injury, and it's not a serious one, and it's not against a particularly threatening opponent, but this is a chance to get a look at what the depth does hold at this position. Whether Mullings holds that spot, did they move Barrett inside? Did they try one of the true freshmen? Who knows? But I think that'll be interesting.
What we are sure that the Hill-Green injury is not serious.
I mean, Sam was kind of intimating today that it was, like they said soft tissue, right?
Okay.
So I've been guessing that's a hamstring or something that, that does heal and doesn't really leave a mess afterwards. If he's
Hamstring, I don't like.
well, there's
hip pointer, I like. Hamstring, I don't like that.
And I mean, there's tear and there's pull, right? So, I mean, if he's like a little bit, and like if it sounds like it might be one of those injuries where if it was Michigan State, he would play. If it's Colorado State,
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the team bubble wrap everybody in the non-conference. If there is a single player who has something hampering him slightly, I don't want to see him against any of these three teams.
I listened to Part C, Alex. You want us to play like just all tomato cans.
That's true. You don't want the season to be 12 games. You're just like, let's make 9-game seasons.
Like let's play Toledo, Ohio, and Slippery Rock, please.
I know the whole roster. I want to see the
State
guys we don't hear about.
And drop Penn State off the schedule for Kent State, and you're just gonna be like, yeah, they're in the Big Ten now. Alex is Big Ten.
So
TV revenue.
Yeah, I mean there is one Big Ten player. It's CJ Onyechi is their defensive end now. He's 6'0", 245 if you remember him.
Where did he transfer from?
Rutgers.
I
thought you said he was a Big Ten player.
But it's funny because Rutgers isn't in the Big Ten.
Yeah, remember that, Chestnut?
It is kind of funny that now, we're adding UCLA and USC because they're going to raise the dough for everybody. But, like, we can't add Oregon, but we added Rutgers because the things were different back then. Like, you're in Rutgers. You get your $90 million like everybody else. Anywho.
I enjoy the like look back at the Big Ten Network 15 years ago coming online, and there was like, oh, it's really visionary of Jim Delaney. And I'm like, yeah, it made some people some money, I guess, but what happened on the field? Nothing good. So, yeah, the people have different priorities in that department. Is there anything else to talk about with Colorado State? Or
there is something weird. We spent all offseason
weird.
talking about the weak side linebacker, who is an inside linebacker, right? Cameron Carter. We were like all about him and Pro Football Focus was on it too, but I saw him balling out against Iowa, and that's when I got on board. And they benched him, or at least the depth chart came out, and he was behind a redshirt freshman walk-on wearing number 49, who's 6'2", 195 at linebacker. So I don't really know what's going on there. I don't know if it was an off-field thing or a system thing or what. They are moving to a new defensive system. They're going to quarters now, so I don't know if maybe he was not working well in the new system, but that kind of threw me for a loop and made me feel kind of foolish for spending all offseason talking about Cameron Carter.
All offseason?
Oh.
Well, a defensive end we flagged as a danger man for UConn and HGTV is literally just vanished from the roster.
Right.
So we're doing pretty well on guys we said to look out for in the non-conference.
Yeah, we also called
so
Trey Roberson there. We'll get to Trey Roberson in UConn week.
Yes, and what a week it shall be. We're going to take a break, come back, and start talking about the upcoming season.
Want the perfect game day outfit? Underground Printing has unique, great-fitting U of M apparel and officially licensed apparel from legendary Michigan names like Woodson, Howard, Ufer, and more. UGP also specializes in custom printed apparel and promotional items for groups, events, and businesses. Whether you need one shirt as a gift or 1,000 shirts for a charity walk, Underground can customize almost anything for groups large or small. To learn more, visit Underground Printing in one of our 3 convenient locations around Ann Arbor or online at undergroundshirts.com. It's painless. It's online. It's group ordering made easy for your next custom printed apparel order. Pogo from Underground Printing will save you time and hassle. Whether you're selling shirts for a fundraiser, organizing a large event, trying to collect sizes and payments for a family reunion, or, ordering a whole bunch of shirts with your Kickstarter, Underground Printing is here to help. Save time and hassle every step of the way with their easy-to-use site. No more guessing what to order, chasing people down to pay, wasting time trying to sort out the order. They'll set it up, you can just sit back and relax. They'll even take care of individual shipping. To learn more about Pogo, visit them at any of their convenient locations or at pogo.undergroundshirts.com.
Hey, it's Nick Hopwood, founder and president at Peak Wealth Management. We have a lot in common. We both went to Michigan, we're both huge fans, but I'm concerned about how much time you're spending on Michigan football recruiting. This could be time spent with me poring over your cash flow and Roth conversion strategy. How are these Roth conversions going to get done with you spending all your time and energy on MGoBlog looking at the next 5-star recruits? Hey, all kidding aside, if you're addicted to MGoBlog and you want to outsource some of your financial planning to an expert, consider us, peakwm.com/MGoBlog. At Peak, we work with people in a variety of situations. Some of our clients are young professionals looking to optimize their savings and investments. For young people, time is the key. Some of our clients are super affluent trying to figure out when they can retire. Some are high net worth retirees looking for a second opinion on how their money's working for them. Get your second opinion at peakwm.com/MGoBlog.
Peak Wealth Management.
Retire with confidence.
If you want to see where our post-game podcast happens, or if you need a spot to land in Ann Arbor, check out 4M, Prentice Partners' beautiful brand new flagship property at 830 Henry Street in Lower Burns Park and across the bridge from the Big House. Their 11 spacious 6-bedroom, 6-bath suites feature state-of-the-art digital capabilities and are laid out for comfortable, efficient collaboration. You can also rent a 4M unit for shorter stays, say if you want to come to town for a football weekend. I want to add myself that they're also taking over Lucky's. We're really excited about their plans for that space. So if you're by the stadium, swing by 830 Henry or visit prentice4m.com.
In southeastern Michigan, the yearly cost for a nursing home averages
approximately $100,000.
It doesn't have to, though. Reed McCarthy founded Ann Arbor Elder Law after handling a tricky situation for his own family. Years of experience later, his boutique firm works with clients across Southeast Michigan, dealing with Medicaid planning, long-term care, and tax, disability, and family law, not to mention family dynamics. If you have a family member who may need that level of care, or if you're ready to start your own estate plan, Reed can give you a plan for the future. Visit AnnArborElderLaw.com or call 734-945-9693. That's 734-945-9693.
Can't say when you'll see me. Can't say when you'll see me. Can't say when.
Welcome back to MGoRadio 8.0. We welcome in Ben Mathis-Lilley, the author of the new book, The Hot Seat, which goes over the most recent Michigan season, which may be of interest to people who like good things happening in their lives. How you doing?
I'm in a great mood. I'm here in Hamilton, Ohio. I came up to Ann Arbor for the reading the other day, and coming back for the game on Saturday. So I'm just enjoying life. I drove by John Boehner's house today for my day job. That had nothing to do with football, but former Speaker of the House, John Boehner. At least I tried to drive by, but it's a country club, so I couldn't get all the way in.
So you of course work for Slate.
Yes.
Why is stalking a former member of the House of Representatives part of your job description?
Well, I'm writing about the Ohio Senate race. We figured that, so my in-laws live down here in Ohio. Hamilton is Ohio, is near Cincinnati. And we thought, since J.D. Vance, who's running for Senate, lives around here, I thought I'd go cruise by his house, which is famously very large. And it's on William Howard Taft Road. And then while I was there, I thought maybe I'd compare it to where John Boehner lives to try to glean some conclusions about the direction of the modern Republican Party. But since I didn't really get anywhere near John Boehner's house, I don't know if I have any conclusions to glean.
I like that you just accepted the charge of stalking. You're like, yep, that's what I was doing.
I never left the public streets.
This is off to a wonderful start. So you did this.
That's what I told the court too, Ben.
So you did.
This is a public right away.
I take it that was also your approach in The Hot Seat, a year of outrage, pride, and occasional games of college football by Ben Mathis-Lilley, available from Public Affairs Books.
I did a lot of ex-player stalking, basically, but none of it in person.
So how did this book come about?
Well, MGO blog and you are a key part of the origin story here. I think you wrote a post that was recommending sports books like 10 years ago, 12 years ago or something, and you recommended Football Against the Enemy.
Yeah. Wow.
Good book. For those who have not read, it's a journalist. He's half Dutch and half English.
Simon Cooper.
Yeah, he's still around. Great writer, good soccer writer. He's half Dutch and half English. And I think at one point he realizes that there's something about the different countries, Netherlands and England, the way that they play soccer ties into their national character in a way he finds amusing. Like the Dutch want to be perfect, and the English, or at least at the time, just wanted to kind of whack the thing way down the field and dominate everyone and kind of recreate imperialism through knocking people over. And so he goes around the entire world, goes to a bunch of countries, exploring this idea that the way that you play soccer has something to do with who you are as a nation. And so I read that book, and whether or not Brian made this comparison explicitly, I don't know, but it is America's version of that is college football. And the example I always use is, at the time, I would compare Oregon, which was basically operating out of a NASA facility in Eugene, funded by Nike, using all the most advanced technology, coming up with plays that had never been seen before, and putting this, little sensors on guys in practice. That was a very extremely West Coast, Eugene, Oregon type of way to play football. And I compared it to LSU, which was coached by Les Miles, who we all know and love in this community, who would order order them to
Uh,
run it into the line 74 times and eat grass off the field, and kind of, I thought, embodied a very swamp-like aggression, an old-fashioned way of playing, and so I thought that comparison was fun. Sought to write a book that compared a bunch of teams. Eventually pared that down to writing about 3 coaches, of which the primary became Jim Harbaugh, because he is the most interesting, not only to me, but to a book buying audience, to a general interest audience, but also Ed Ogeron at LSU, and Willie Taggart from Florida State and Florida. But a lot of it ended up being about Michigan, because they had the most interesting season, and I could go to their games most easily without having to pay an exorbitant amount to travel.
I went to your reading at Literati, and afterwards we were talking. You mentioned that when you were first pitching the book, you're like, "Oh, it's about all these other programs too," and they were like, "No. Michigan people actually buy books."
Yeah, we're testing that right now. We're in the first week of testing that theory out. It's going pretty well so far. But yeah, I was always very self-conscious when I was talking to agents and publishers in New York City, that I wanted them to know I didn't just want them to pay me to go to see my favorite team play. But when I got the editor I did, who's at Public Affairs Books, his name's Ben Adams, and he was like, no, yeah, make it as much about Michigan as you want, because that's like, there's an audience for that, and we're not so sure if there's an audience for Clemson books or LSU books, or probably not.
LSU fans don't read. That's exactly what they're telling you.
Hey, you know what? I talked to some great LSU, some very literate, very generous LSU fans down there. For Podcat is a longtime member of the college football internet community. He's out there. Zach Rao, they were great. They're reading the book right now. They both got it this week. So I'm hoping that we're breaking through the stereotypes there.
I mean, we're trying to, but you did just mention that the 2 people you talked to were literate. So usually it goes without saying. So how much of this book is actually about Michigan?
Probably in about 3/4 in the end. It's I write about most of the games. I do a host history. I was at Michigan's history, the actual University of Michigan's history of college athletics class for undergraduates on Wednesday, talking about the history of the university and its relation to Thomas Jefferson, and kind of how everything in college football can actually, in a weird way, be tied back to Thomas Jefferson. So there's, I start there, and then I go through the Ohio State game. So probably I would say 75% of it is Michigan content. And in the course of it, I try to not only follow the season, but try to figure out why I and other people are so fascinated and kind of like emotionally compelled by this particular sport.
There's also a complete section where he copy pasted from the MGO board.
Yeah,
Seriously?
The whole Washington, the intro to the chapter about the Washington game is people going absolutely nuts, including myself, to be fair, on the 247 board and on MGO blog board about the team and how they're like, we had no chance of beating anybody else all season, and the offensive play calling, and like, this is like, it's just a disaster. The punchline being, for the people who are reading it who don't remember that game, that like, I can go through all these like just extremely overheated, hyperbolic, obscene remarks about the team, and then the punchline is like, Michigan won this game 31-10, I think, and it like actually was never close. And these people reacted this way despite what was happening on the field being largely uneventful, if not outright pleasant for them.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it was deep into last season, and I was still like, this isn't happening. And like, I mean, the Penn State game where Michigan has this lead and Penn State gets a couple of breaks, they go up by 3, and everybody on Twitter is just murdering each other.
Yeah.
And this is a team with 1 loss.
Yeah.
At this point.
That's one of the chapters I hope is new, that will be new to MGO blog readers as well as the general public, and I hope people enjoy that. So actually, that's the moment at which I had interviewed this guy before the season, actually, but I knew that I wanted him to bring him in somehow. I found a guy who leads Buddhist meditation retreats in the woods in Massachusetts. His name is Chaz DeCapua. And I asked him for help managing my emotions around the sport of college football. And it turned out this was actually random. He used to be a huge Patriots fan and still is kind of a fan, like as we get into in the book in a way that's hopefully kind of funny. So he actually knew exactly what I was talking about. And he was like describing like the different like kind of currents of fear and anxiety in a way that like you could tell that he actually did know what I meant. So he gave me some advice and we talked for a while, and I was waiting for a place to put that. And that moment that you're actually just brought up was exactly where I knew it had to go. Was like the second after Cade got sacked, and they were like, as they were preparing to, as Penn State was preparing to take the ball on the 17-yard line or whatever, and probably most Michigan fans assumed, score and kind of put the game away.
Yeah, so this is sort of memoir-ish. It's like a personal.
There's a personal component. It's like trying to figure out why I am the way I am, but also then through that why everyone is the way they are.
Asking the big questions.
It really does. And as I get into, I know you're a Frasier fan. There's like some. There's a Frasier.
Is it that obvious?
Well, I think you've liked my tweets about Frasier.
Busted.
And I don't think anyone who doesn't watch Frasier just goes and does that, because like, Frasier is one of the weirdest shows to talk about. If you don't like hearing people talk about Frasier, like if you don't know who those characters are, is like it like does not make sense why anyone would like that show. So I assume that anyone who's conversant with it. No, I kind of get into I actually Frasier is the character of Frasier is who I imagine as the like least sports fan person in the world, which actually is kind of a subplot on the show. But I try to kind of get into like why even people like that actually have something which means as much to them or which they relate to in the same way that sports fans relate to sports. People cry at operas. People cry at football games. It's basically for the same reason, I think. And so I get into stuff like that in the book as well.
All right, so this is just like an attempt to explain yourself to your wife. It kind of sounds like.
That's right.
I know you have had a lot of questions over the years, and this is my best effort at explaining why I am the way I am.
Yeah. That could have been the tagline for the book, really.
All right. What is the best way to get the hot seat?
Anywhere books are sold. I think it should be at the MDen, even at the MDen. Also, obviously, bookstores, indie bookstores, chain bookstores, and online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those good places.
All right.
I'll put a link in the
thanks for
description
joining
for
us,
people
Ben.
too.
Okay, thank you. Hey, before I go, I want to blow up Brian's spot just because he's wearing the same shirt he was on Tuesday.
I've been working so hard this week, Ben. You don't know, Ben. You don't know, Ben. All right. We're going to take a break, come back, and talk about what we learned from our season preview activities.
All right, thanks, guys.
At Peak Wealth, we believe we can help you retire with confidence. It's Nick Hopwood, certified financial planner from
Peak Wealth Management
in Plymouth. I graduated from Michigan in 2001 with an econ degree and founded Peak Wealth Management in 2014. And now we have over $240 million of assets under management. As a freshman in 97, winning the national championship in football and hockey didn't get any better than that. Both my wife and I lived in Bursley that year, and it's crazy because we never actually met while living in the same dorm. Probably because she had a car and I had to ride the bus. But we named our dog Bursley anyway, and he's on the payroll here at Peak Wealth Management. At Peak, we're fee-based. We're your fiduciary, which means everything we recommend is always in your best interest. We partner with leading institutional money managers, focus on low fees, and make sure every client has a financial plan covering retirement, college, tax, estate, insurance, and cash flow. Simply put, we are
Peak Wealth Management,
your comprehensive financial coach. Book your second opinion at peakwm.com/mgoblog.
Peak Wealth Management.
Retire with confidence.
This is Matt Demrest, the owner of Homeshore Lending. We're a local mortgage company here to help you purchase with confidence and refinance with ease. People don't get mortgages very often, so it can be confusing. We'll break down every single line item so that it all makes sense. And at the end of the day, if we're not giving you the best deal, we'll tell you to go with the other company. We're here to offer our simple mortgage guidance.
This is Seth Fisher from MGoBlog. Over the years, we've sent dozens of readers to use Homeshore Lending, and every review that's come back has been raving. I myself used them to refinance after doing our original loan through our bank. I was amazed how much smoother the process was for our complicated loan. Brian used them, you should use them too.
Finding out whether it makes sense or not to refinance or getting pre-approved to buy a new home is easy. Head over to homeshorelending.com, that's HOMESURE, lending.com/MGoBlog to find out more. Or call us at 734-531-9950. That's 734-531-9950. I've got two of my favorite people here with me, kind of an annual tradition, Cooper and Colby. Cooper, how old are you?
11.
Colby, how about you?
9.
Can I get a Go Blue?
Go Blue!
NMLS number 116135, Equal Housing Lender.
It's painless. It's online. It's group ordering made easy for your next custom printed apparel order. Pogo from Underground Printing will save you time and hassle, whether you're selling shirts for a fundraiser, organizing a large event, or trying to collect sizes and payment for a family reunion. UGP is here to help. Save time and hassle every step of the way with our easy-to-use site. No more guessing what to order, chasing down people to pay, or wasting time trying to sort out the order. We'll set it up and you can just sit back and relax. We can even take care of individual shipping. To learn more about Pogo, visit us at any of our convenient locations or at pogo.undergroundshirts.com.
1 and 2 and...
If you find yourself on the wrong side of the law, you want a Michigan man in the huddle. Call criminal law attorney and former prosecutor Jonathan Paul at 248-924-9458 or visit his website at michiganlawgrad.com. John is a proud graduate of the University of Michigan Ross School of Business and Michigan Law School, and he looks forward to showing you the Michigan difference.
Welcome back to MGoRadio 8.0. We are going to discuss now the changes in our opinion now that we've gone through the entire season preview process, at least for the position groups. We're going to start with the offense. And so we had a season preview podcast last couple weeks ago, and we have our takes from that season preview podcast. And now we're going to talk about, so what do we think has changed, whether it's chatter from within the program or just vibes, or if we went over a position group in detail to preview it, what feels different. And I thought we'd start with Seth, because Seth did the offensive line, because I was just like, I didn't UFR these guys.
Yeah.
I don't I know what I feel about Andrew Anthony, right? But
right.
I didn't go over every one of those guys with the fine-tooth comb, so I'm not the man to do it this year. So going through this process, going back over all the stuff that you did for UFR last year, and then writing up all of these guys, what changed in your opinion?
First of all, I'd forgotten that so many of them got injured last year. That there was a segment of the season where it was Chuck Filianga and Carson Barnhart playing guard, and Filianga was playing hurt, and then they had to bring Zinter back, and Zinter had that club on his hand. He was not healthy for a big portion of the season. I don't think until Penn State was he even getting off the mat, and maybe that was the first game I think all season he was fine. So, you look at how young these guys are too, and I know we were trying to figure out what to do with the 2020 season because it throws our whole redshirt system off, which is it's already hard enough to figure out what everybody's year is, but the question of whether you count that year because guys got in for one game or half a game or something like that. Do you count? Is that how much did Trevor Keegan really get to play that season or get to practice even that season? But when you start considering all these things, and they just pile up, how young these guys are. Ryan Hayes is, the elder statesman on the offense, but he was a guy who came in as a tight end and had to get converted, and you saw that over the course of the season a lot. And just reading through the UFRs going from start to finish, that really came on strong. That we were in the process of watching a young offensive line grow up, and was really for most of them kind of that freshman to sophomore leap that they were going through, which means offensive linemen, they hit their peaks in their 30s, right? Like these guys in the NFL, sometimes they're not their best selves until they're 29, 30 years old. And like you're watching them get so much better, so much in front of you, and it's like, well, if you take that progression another offseason, see what Zach Zinter is when he's got two hands, and see what Trevor Keegan is when he's slimmed down and he's not doesn't have maybe some of the athletic issues that he had last year, and give Ryan Hayes an opportunity to get a little bit stronger and work a little bit on his slide technique, and this is the Joe Moore winning team, and then you add a Remington center to it, and it's I'm afraid of how positive I was starting to get because I couldn't find negatives. And then Oluwatimi, the same thing. The talk on him all offseason was just ridiculous.
So one thing we haven't really addressed is that there's a huge gap between perception of Michigan's line, the awards that they've been given, and then your grading. All of that's on one side. And then the other side is Pro Football Focus, which ranked Michigan, I think, 8th in the Big Ten. Ace looked this up. They ranked them 8th in the Big Ten in run block grade. And they love Michigan's running back, so I guess that those things kind of go hand in hand. If you're grading the running backs really, really high, then you can have a good running game without having OL that are grading out amazingly. But, I mean, just what do you make of that?
I mean, Pro Football Focus, I think they've always had an issue with how they grade because they end up having to do a lot of math, and they try to simplify it, and they don't break out screens. I mean, they can't do that, right? They're fly-by charting service. They could not look at every single screen, look how long everyone sits in pass protection. Michigan's pass protections had to last a long time. They were either in a passing mode when they were passing, or they were doing flea flickers and stuff.
I believe that this grade was not for overall offensive line. It was solely on the ground. So I'm sure that they graded out pretty well as pass blocking line.
And then the ground, I think it gets back into the fact that they didn't have the line for most of the season. The Joe Moore Award, I don't know if Michigan start to finish last year was the best offensive line in the country. I think that you'd actually have a really hard time making that case. I think by the end of the season, when the people who vote for the Joe Moore Award, who are all offensive linemen, you have to even be a line coach or offensive lineman just to be part of that. We're watching Michigan versus Ohio State. That game was 1995 versus Ohio State level of offensive line play. Everyone just played well beyond what they played all season. And that carried over for some guys to the Georgia game, and it didn't for other guys. But and the Iowa game as well. But I think that's where the Joe Moore Award win happened, was the Ohio State game. If you go through the rest of the season, they missed some blocks. Carson Barnhart actually played terrible at guard. He actually had a much better season when he was a freshman at tackle than he did in 2021 when he was thrown in there at guard. And a lot of it was just mental mistakes. He was missing guys. Chuck Filianga had a couple issues. Keegan was kind of up and down the whole season until finally leveling out at pretty good. And Zinter was playing one-handed. So, one side of him, he was just destroying people, and the other side of him, he didn't have a hand. So if you total up everything throughout the season, the running backs, you remember my charting earlier in the year, it was running backs were getting ridiculous grades. And I stand by that after looking it over again, because it's they met guys in the backfield and had to dodge around them, or if they had to set up their own blocks because the offensive line wasn't getting off their doubles. It was only late in the season when Zinter started crushing people. Keegan his intelligence really took over, that kind of stuff.
Alex, has your view of the offense shifted at all?
I don't think totally. I do want to say one thing on the offensive line that I thought kind of came up reading Seth's pieces was the fact that, those injuries to the interior offensive line really reached their peak in late October when Michigan played Michigan State. And I think it hasn't been talked about enough when in that matchup, they played the best interior defensive lineman in the Big Ten, in my opinion, in Jacob Slade. And that was such a huge part of that game. And the injuries there, I think, really created a mismatch that isn't talked about enough in terms of the story of that game. And that'll be something to watch going into this year. One name we did not say in the preseason offensive podcast, who came up in the preseason articles and in Harbaugh's talk, is Peyton O'Leary. His name did not get mentioned, so I wanted to shout him out.
Direct comparison to Cooper Kupp from Jim Harbaugh, which is, I mean, they switched his number. He was 38 in the spring, and now he's 81 or something. So I mean, that says something. It does say something that he has been brought up multiple times by multiple different people. He is 6'3". Like he's got some size there to work with. And I mean, if people are talking about him, why would they be talking about him? Right? Like you have 5 different guys. I mean, one thing that I do think kind of jumped out to me when I did the wide receiver section is that they really have every piece that you need.
Mm-hmm.
They have your deep shot guy in Roman Wilson. You have a guy who can turn a guy around and get open for a 20-yard gain in Cornelius Johnson. They have a guy who I think is going to be a terrific slot receiver in Ronnie Bell. They have the end around guy in AJ Henning, and then they have the guy who can go high point everything in Andrew Anthony. And these skill sets overlap, right? Like Cornelius Johnson should be able to high point some balls. We've seen Ronnie Bell do it. We've seen Ronnie Bell get open deep. We've seen Ronnie Bell burn people. But just in terms of like, if you have a weakness in your secondary, Michigan has the personnel to attack it. And it doesn't matter what that weakness is. So, I mean, I was really high on the wide receiver group even going into that preview. And then by the time I came out of it, I was just like, holy God. Like, they are going to be incredible as long as they throw the ball, and they might not have to do that much. I mean, I think the ideal for the offense right now is to have balance, and that's like not last year when you're a run heavy team, but it's probably not being a pass heavy team either. It's getting right down that 50-50 in terms of yards from each phase of the game. And I mean, other than that, like you kind of look down at the tight end stuff and you're like, there's a lot of names down here. And I don't know if anyone's going to have a lot of time this year, but I think someone's probably going to poke their nose through and it's going to look fine for the year after. And then just going over the quarterbacks where it's like, you can see how Cade McNamara gets there.
Mm-hmm.
I think before I did the quarterbacks preview, I was like, Team JJ, Team JJ, Team JJ. And then you just look at his season, you look at it, the improvement on the back half of the season, which was up and down still, but there was a clear uptick in his ability to perform. You look at the fact that he was a redshirt sophomore, and one of those years was the COVID year. So he still has a lot of runway to improve. And if you look at his deep ball accuracy, all he really has to do is find those guys and be a little bit more aggressive, and like even be more aggressive to the point where like sometimes you're throwing into coverage because like you're throwing into coverage and Ronnie Bell or Andrew Anthony's out there, like see what happens. And like I just feel like if he is better able to read, he's better able to take advantage of what's there, he has the accuracy to stay in front. And the fact that he threw like 2 interceptions that were interceptable balls, like he had a couple deflections and all that stuff, inaccurate passes, but not passes that were directly to a defender, except for I think 2, and then one of those I think Nebraska was offsides on.
Mm-hmm.
So to have that over a full season as your first season as a college starter, and then on top of that to have the sack avoidance that he had, like all he really has to do is take advantage of opportunities that are there. All the peripheral stuff where it's like, don't get your team in trouble, he already excels at. So I came out of that much more 50-50 about the quarterback battle.
That's interesting, man. Like, so you think that Michigan could win the national championship with Cade McNamara?
I think that there's a version of Cade McNamara that does get there.
Okay.
Like, and it's the version of Cade McNamara that is like fully Drew Brees, Tom Brady,
Mhm.
where it's just like his reads are automatic. He's stepping into every throw with confidence. He knows where he's going a lot of time before the snap even happens, which is something that you saw from him last year.
Yeah.
Like, I think that for him to get there, he has to be much more precise and much more mentally advanced than JJ McCarthy, because JJ McCarthy can make up for a bunch of stuff because he's got a crazy arm and he's got crazy legs. But I think that there's a version of him in there that beats Ohio State. I don't want to say win the national championship because Georgia and Alabama, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
That's like real hard to do. But I think that there's a version of Cade McNamara in there who can win the Big Ten as a guy that the team leans on, which is not the case last year, right? They weren't leaning on Cade McNamara. So, and you go back to the relative youth, right? Like quarterbacks from one year to the next can be completely different people. And I felt like what we saw from him was enough to project that if he gets a lot better, which is possible, that package can be elite quarterback.
Well, and what we've been hearing is that Cade has kind of identified the areas he needs to improve in camp, and that he's looking to be more aggressive, and he's also looking to be a little more mobile. And I think, in part that's him looking at what JJ has over him in terms of skill set. And those are the areas, I mean, if we're talking about in the first segment, things I'm looking for against Colorado State, in part, I'm curious to see if Cade's going to run a little bit more. We heard that in scrimmage a week ago that he had a 30-yard touchdown scramble. So I'm curious about that a little bit. And we did see it a little more at the end of last year. Remember in the Big Ten championship game where they motioned everybody wide and then Cade rumbled up the middle for 10 yards. So, those are little things, but those are ways he can improve, and I'm looking for just moving forward. But I thought Brian did make a really good case for Cade in that piece, while still showing what everyone knows about JJ. Because my sense of the fan base is it's about 80% Team JJ, and they feel it in their hearts. They see the potential.
That sounds low to me.
Okay.
I had the guy at the post office
Maybe it's
today talk my
90%.
ear off for about 15 minutes about JJ, so I know it's out there. Just shifting gears a little bit because you kind of like brushed by it. How did you like my boy Eric All, Brian? Because like I got so excited about him last year, and I was like, am I insane? Like
I thought you were a little over the top.
Okay.
So I would, I pull out all the clips,
Mm-hmm.
and then I don't know if something's a +1 or a +2 or a plus 0.5. So it is kind of interesting to see, like, all right, so looking at Eric All on this play, what did he do? How do I feel about that?
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of Eric All clips where I was like, okay.
There's +1s. There were a lot of +1s that he had last year. That's the thing, though. They ran off his side all the time, and it would just total up.
I don't know. I kind of feel like if Eric All is talking about how like, oh, Luke Schoonmaker is a much better blocker than I am, and I'm like, I don't know where that comes from, but I feel like there might be something that we're missing.
Like, I have a theory on that. I think that Eric All tends to, once he makes his block, he kind of looks back and see, like, he throws himself into the block. So first of all, he's just kind of like looking at the chest of the guy he hit. But then he kind of looks back once he's latched on to see where his running back is. And Schoonmaker's much better at seeing the whole board, right? And, there was that one clip, I think it was on Arc Read, where you saw it was a linebacker coming in. You saw that guy had no chance to make the play. So he just kind of gives him a little shove on the shoulder and moves on. And you didn't really see that from Eric All. Eric All would see his target and get him, and then kind of look back and see what happened.
That was against Michigan State. That was a counter.
Okay.
And he saw that there was a cornerback coming in from the outside that was nominally his responsibility. And he's like, that guy's not going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And he moved on to a safety and got enough of him so that he took him out of the play. So, yeah, I think there might be something there. I mean, I think a good thing about Eric All also might kind of point to some of his limitations is that you see him when he engages with a defensive back, you see him come in very calmly and just latch onto the guy and then ride him. He has confidence that he's big enough to do this. And then when he's got a defensive end who's charging in on a split zone, he throws his body into the block.
Right.
And that's what he's got to do because he doesn't have the size of Schoonmaker. Now he's 10 pounds heavier this year, so maybe he won't have to do that. But I think it's because he's got to just gotta get after it in a way because he's never been the biggest guy. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that he seems like an All-American type, like Blake Bowers from Georgia. And that was kind of the thing that was like, I just saw this guy play in a couple of games. I'm like, that guy.
Right.
And I don't feel the same way about Eric All. I think he's a really good player. I think he's all Big Ten level, but I didn't think he was like All-American.
Oh, he was. I mean, here's because I saw your take. I saw Pro Football Focus's take, and I saw my numbers. And like my feelings were based on my numbers that kept on coming out super duper positive. But like I see when other guys make that block, and that's that block where the tight end crosses the formation and gets the kick out on split zone or counter, whichever one it is. Most guys don't get they don't throw their whole bodies into it all the time, or even if they do, they don't get there fast enough to create the space that Eric All did. So every time I gave this guy like a plus 15, minus 4 or something like that for a game. And I'd be like, that's really, really positive. And then you go to the other side and Michigan would just be destroying. I don't know, it's not Aiden Hutchinson, obviously, but like Ojabo was doing it. Jalen Harrell was doing it. Michigan had those guys' numbers the way that Eric All never got. And it wasn't a lot of plus 2s. I don't think I had very many plus 2 events for him all season until the Georgia game. There was like one drive where Eric All just went ballistic. And I think it ended because they didn't throw it at Eric All and he threw an interception in the corner of the end zone. But everything else, that whole drive, whether it was a run or whether it was passing down the field, Eric All was like one of the players that stood out against Georgia. And that's the thing about him. He's a guy that like old school people should latch onto because like he does it so many plays. And in the end, his contribution is very positive. And I don't know. You're right. He's not a Blake Bowers, but he's the kind of guy that UFR I think gets excited about because of the system that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible that we have different approaches to grading.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I've done grading in the past, I'm always careful to be like, so this looks like this number, but it's a linebacker, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if he's at 0, we're okay with that.
Okay.
And if he's a defensive end, he needs to be +8 or else we're going to get crotchety. So it's possible that, if you did tight ends for a number of years, you'd be like, oh, I guess I'm just grading these guys higher than Brian did. But who knows?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break, come back, and talk about the other side of the ball.
Wait, you can't do that. Yeah, you didn't talk about Blake Corum.
I have no different opinions about Blake Corum.
Okay, now you can take a break.
All of my opinions about Blake Corum are exactly the same as they were.
All right, now you can break.
The only thing we can be sure of about the future is that it will be absolutely fantastic. I'm thinking of the incredible breakthrough made possible by developments in communications.
Arthur C. Clarke's 1964 vision is now reality with SignalWire, a cloud platform that enables developers to build the applications that will reshape the future of communications.
These things will make possible a world in which we can be in instant contact with each other wherever we may be.
You can add cutting-edge, real-time video and audio to any product, website, or application with APIs and SDKs for developers of all skill sets. SignalWire is optimized for high-quality and low-latency communication functionality for video, voice, and text messaging capabilities.
Almost any skill could be made independent of distance. Men will no longer commute. They will communicate.
See for yourself at signalwire.com. Use code 2021 and receive $25 in developer credit. Go to signalwire.com.
SignalWire Communications OGs, original geeks of programmable communication.
Is your online store sluggish, outdated, underperforming? You may be suffering from chronic crappy website disorder. 1 in 3 online stores built by your brother's friend's nephew currently suffers from chronic crappy website. But now, there's hope. Introducing Human Element. Huel has helped hundreds suffering from CCW to turn their online stores around, creating fast, secure, and engaging online experiences that turn visitors into customers and put products back at the top of their search engine game.
Before Huel, I had abandoned carts, browser errors, and poorly animated GIFs. Now, with Huel, I can focus on what I'm actually good at, running my business.
Jeffrey, would you be a deer and pull the Ferrari around?
Side effects may include increased traffic, customer conversions, better ROI, compliments, elation, and early retirement. Why live with the disappointment of chronic crappy website disorder? Speak to your human element consultant today to see if Huel is right for you.
Want the perfect game day outfit? Underground Printing has unique, great-fitting U of M apparel and officially licensed apparel from legendary Michigan names like Woodson, Howard, Ufer, and more. UGP also specializes in custom printed apparel and promotional items for groups, events, and businesses. Whether you need one shirt as a gift or 1,000 shirts for a charity walk, Underground can customize almost anything for groups large or small. To learn more, visit Underground Printing at one of our 3 convenient locations around Ann Arbor or online at undergroundshirts.com.
Here's a thing people say. Seth, tell me about your insurance.
I'm actually glad you asked me about that because I just changed my insurance and I'm really happy I did.
Let me guess, you use Phil Klein and Owen Rosen of the Phil Klein Insurance Group.
They are MGO blog readers and they don't advertise during football games.
And they've got a 5-star rating on anything you would care to see. Call Owen at 248-682-7445 or visit them online at philkleininsurance.com. Welcome back to MGoRadio 8.0. Before we get started with the defense, who provided the music for this lovely episode?
That was Summer Like the Season. I came late to the party. Like everyone in Detroit apparently already knows about her. Or it's a little threesome, but I saw her in the Metro Times and over the summer and was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. I'll check it out. And then my wife and I have been listening to her in our little work covey for the rest of the summer. So glad I got to stick her out there, and she's I don't know, pretty mellow and pretty good stuff. So
all right, so we're talking about how our opinions changed during the course of the season preview process, and Alex tackled the linebackers. Alex, did your meter move in any particular directions?
I don't think I can tackle any linebackers, to be frank. But no, I think that it was interesting because it shows kind of how Michigan adapted to their schedule, where late in the year, Seth was the one kind of banging the table for Nakai Hill-Green often throughout the season, and yet his workload decreases as the year goes along, and a lot of that seemed to be because they needed Josh Ross to take the hard stuff in that role for the most part, and then they were playing spread offenses where they were worried about athleticism, and so they go with Junior Colson for the most part over NHG for that reason, even though NHG was probably the better guy. And at that same time, they add Barrett back in, especially against Indiana and Penn State as kind of a personnel thing. So, it was interesting just in that way to see how usage changed in 2021 based on who they were playing. And I think that also potentially shows a little bit of a peak of what this year could be like, where you're probably going to see a lot of Colson and NHG when they're healthy. But I think Barrett's going to have a real role on this defense. And ideally not at inside linebacker, but in that kind of Viper role where he was getting 25 snaps at the end of last season. And in this defense where we're probably going to need to blitz more in order to get pressure, he's a guy who can blitz like Kalik, right? Like he has those flashes where you see that. He had a sack against, I think it was Penn State, and I think he's going to be an interesting piece. The depth was about as creaky as feared, I think. If I had to throw one name out there of the guy I learned the most about in doing the process, it would be Jaden Hood. And that's because I was very close to publishing the piece without mentioning him. Like, there has been no
Alex, this is not helping.
There has been no mention of him in camp whatsoever, and I was like, "Oh, that guy still exists." So I added him in, but yeah, I mean, it seems like Mullings is first up, and that will be interesting because he kind of seemed like Coulson, but a lot worse, which is not great. Last year. And I don't know, after that, we've heard Pollard, we've heard Rolder a little bit, but, those are true freshmen who didn't even early enroll. So I don't know. I mean, we haven't really even heard Joey Velasquez either. I mean, my conclusion in doing it is that if NHG is healthy and Junior Colson is healthy and those guys have progressed like we'd expect, they'll probably be pretty good. I don't know if they're all Big Ten level yet. They've got a long way to go, but I think they should be fine starters. It's just everything after that is probably about what we thought, and they're probably going to do some stuff with Barrett too.
Yeah, I want to talk about.
Going to play. You think Barrett's going to play on the inside?
I want to talk about
on
Barrett.
The inside. I think Seth, take that.
Yeah. I mean, this is what he was talking about here. It's like where did that hybrid space player come from? It was like teams started using running quarterbacks. They had the Rich Rod offense changed things, and everyone went spread. And the answer to that was to have a guy who could sit back like a safety and cover space. And that's where the hybrid space player came out of, and that's what he was recruited to be. And then when Michigan last year played against teams that used primarily a running quarterback, except for Rutgers, they didn't have him available, I think, at that point. But Indiana, they were playing a guy who's now, I believe, at wide receiver, a quarterback. And Penn State, they have a quarterback who his legs are a major part of their offense. And so they brought back Barrett. They brought back, I called it their 4-3 last year, but it was really their 4-2-5. It was the same personnel that Don Brown would use, and it was incredibly effective. In fact, more effective, I thought, than their 5-2, which they would bring out whenever teams went to an extra tight end. Up to the point where I was hoping they would actually use Barrett instead of Harrell and that whole package, because I thought that Michigan that's who their personnel were. And Barrett is still very good as a Viper. Every time they tried to make him an inside linebacker, he just did not have it. He looked like
he's just not big enough.
Yeah,
he's not big enough.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was thinking, so that's why I wanted to clarify that. On my end, I went over all the defensive ends, and I'm like, which one of these guys might bust out? And I think my answer is Derek Moore.
Okay.
Because Derek Moore is now 279 pounds on the roster. He's older than an average freshman, so physically ready. And his recruiting profile is just I cannot believe that this guy moves the way he does at this size. All of it. And they say that he doesn't have any pass rush moves. Okay. I accept. That's fine. If there's one guy who can put the fear of God in someone off the edge on this team, maybe it's Yabi Anoma. My bet is Derek Moore. And I feel like he's going to learn a pass rush move, right? Maybe he's not going to be particularly crazy about it, but all he has to do really is alternate between going off the edge and speed to power, because he has the size. And if there's a guy who's worried about you going around him and all of a sudden you're bull rushing him, that's going to be enough. I don't think he's going to play on standard downs. I think that's going to be mostly Jalen Harrell, who I really like as a run defender. But when it comes time to get after the quarterback, Derek Moore is my guy for breakout side end.
Yeah, I think I comped him to Rashawn Gary, and I was definitely...
You did, which is not sane.
Not
at all sane.
I was definitely twisting the... I don't know what the word for what I was doing there, but I was making a point about Rashawn Gary at the same time. That I was comparing him not to what we thought Rashawn Gary would be, but what Rashawn Gary was as a player at Michigan, where...
I'm not sure if I agree with that.
I mean, he was just a massive. He's a guy who's 280 pounds who moves like a linebacker.
Right. So I feel like he was actually the last guy I talked about in that section, but I feel like if I had to bet on someone being the guy who comes and rescues the pass rush, it's Derek Moore. And then the defensive tackles, just going over what Mazi Smith was able to do last year. Like, I was optimistic about Mazi Smith. Everybody's optimistic about Mazi Smith after the Freaks article, but there's this play against Nebraska where a Nebraska offensive line with one hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and then you look at his grading, and the grading is pretty good. And then you think about the context, right? Like, it's okay. He put up a +7. That's solid for a sophomore. He put up a +7 when the guy next to him was putting up a +20, and the guy on the other side of the line is putting up a +15. There's not that many points to go around. And given his role last year, he didn't really have to go after their points in pass rush. If it came to him, it came to him. That's fine. This year, they're going to need to rely on him, and I think we've seen enough from him to think that he's really going to blow up. So I was already on board the Mazi Smith hype train, and after watching all that stuff, I'm even more over the moon about him. Similarly, DJ Turner.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you go over DJ Turner's clips from last year, and you're just like, everything that happened to DJ Turner that was bad was just, there's 1 inch that you got and you hit the inch, or you get horribly OPI'd and they call it on you. Everything he gave up was tight coverage, and you couple that with the freak stuff where it's like, maybe this guy runs a 4.3, maybe he's going to set a record, the 3-cone drill at the NFL draft combine, which I don't necessarily think is true, but if it's anywhere near true, like they say that this guy's running step for step with Roman Wilson, we've seen what Roman Wilson can do. Like, I think people are underrating him badly, except for Pro Football Focus, which has him a third-team All-American. So those were two guys who really just sort of leapt out to me as guys who are already contributors, who I think are already playing at a super high level and still have more upside to explore. So I actually got, I think, considerably more optimistic about the defense as I did this process, because I think they have two out and out stars in Turner and Mazi Smith, and then I like Jenkins, I like Mike Morris. I think they have enough to stick somewhere around where they were last year, and that's not having an elite defense, but one that's very good. And hopefully you can get Derek Moore coming around by the end of that.
This is just a thing for readers in general, but we talk about true freshmen at different positions and where they usually succeed and don't, but we don't talk about it too much with edge. And you brought up Derek Moore. What's the MGO blog consensus on true freshmen at edge?
I think they can be useful pass rushers, but you don't want them as an every down player. Like, if they have it, sometimes you can just tell immediately. I'm thinking about Josh Uche, Chase Winovich, and they weren't as effective as they were later in their careers, but you could tell, and they were productive as rush specialists. Now, they
both
weren't
those guys
out of this world.
redshirted, so we didn't even get to see them.
Yeah,
those are
that's
redshirt
true.
freshmen we saw. I mean,
we saw Gary as a true freshman.
Yeah, but Gary was the number one recruit in the country.
The only person who's allowed to talk about Gary is apparently Seth. So
I was talking about Gary, the player we got. But anyway, we don't have any good comparisons because Michigan barely ever has started them. Now other teams have, but James Hall, when's the last one we had?
I think I would say about Derek Moore is that he's older than an average freshman. He's huge. So he's 280, right? There's no question that he's physically ready, and also he did enroll early, so he is a true freshman. But I think that there are a lot of things that you could say, all right, physically I would not consider him a true freshman, and he got a little bit of experience in the spring, really looks the part. I don't think that he's going to be the starting. Guys, it's a 4.3 under, right? That's what it is.
Yeah.
You can talk about whatever it is, but that's what it is.
Most of the time they're going to be a nickel anyway. So
right, I know, but when they're in a 7-man front, they have a 292-pound outside linebacker, and then they have a guy who's basically Jake Ryan. or Mario Ojimudia, it's a 4-3 under.
Right.
So I just felt like he mitigates a lot of those issues. And then the other guy who I feel similarly about is Mason Graham, who I've been, talking about Mason Graham ever since he was a Boise State commit. But just all the things that people say about him in the program, his ascent to a quasi-starting job, doesn't bother me as much as it would for basically anyone other than Mason Graham, because he crushed it in his senior year of high school. He won't have conditioning issues. He is 317 pounds. Like, that's a guy who can cope in year one and then blow up in year two. That's my projection for that.
Yeah, I think we want to see it in spring too. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, the consensus reading your piece or what you were saying was that he's probably not going to be out there that much despite being a starter. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at
starter with quotation.
Everyone's a starter.
Who the teams on the schedule are who are actually going to be running out big old school personnel, and it's only a couple of teams. Now, short yardage, I think he's going to get a lot of snaps in short yardage and red zone stuff. Like, yeah, he'll be out there a significant amount. Is he going to be out there 50% of the time? Probably not.
Yeah. I mean, keep this in mind. The first team we're going to face that really is going to put two tight ends out there is Iowa. So we're going to be at Iowa, true freshman, hopefully not a night game. But Iowa's guards are terrible last year. And they have to place Tyler Linderbaum, so I don't know if they've got significantly improved in the interior, but, that could be quite a show if they have not.
Yeah, and, Graham is not a guy who I'm like, what if they reach him? If Kenneth Grant was in line for a lot of playing time, I'd be like, I don't really like him against his zone team. Graham is a guy who I feel can hack it in that environment. And I don't think is he gonna get a double all year?
I don't know, but he's gonna
be flanked by Mozzie Smith and Morris. Like,
he's gonna blow a fit. I mean, you're a true freshman defensive tackle. Yeah. This is what happens. He's gonna blow a fit. They're gonna stretch him, and he's like Jenkins had a huge one last year too. Like, young tackles screw up.
Yeah, that's true. That's the cost, but just in terms of is he going to be a big glaring weak spot? I don't think so. I think he'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm a little bit more optimistic about Jamon Green than you are, Seth. But
I mean, he sticks with guys, right? He's got the 90%, but he's like fifth-year senior. Like, when does that come around? Like,
I mean, but so okay,
Channing Stribling didn't do it as a fifth-year senior.
Fifth-year senior, you really didn't like what he did in zone. He was in a Don Brown defense for this. So I think that he still has upside to explore in the context of this defense. And yeah, the Channing Stribling phasing out of reality stuff is a problem. Channing Stribling got over that just to a large extent.
As a junior, not as a fifth-year guy.
I know. I'm just saying, at some point, he's going to be around the receiver and the ball's going to hit him and it's going to be okay. I just feel like it'll be fine. Will Johnson is probably going to pass in midseason. I think he's still going to get time. I think he's still going to deserve that time. And I think that there's a vague chance he goes in the 7th round of the draft. That's my Jamon Green take.
Do you agree that they're going to be doing a lot more man defense this year? I mean, you got Turner and Jamon. You got Turner for a whole season because you only had him half the year last year starting. And Will Johnson comes in it seems, and that's what the Ravens did too. So I've been telling people all summer that they're going to do more man. They're not going to be a base man. They're not going to be Don Brown. But
yeah, I think it'll be part of their repertoire, and also you go over Moton's clips, and at no point did Moton get nailed over the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had the one really bad fill against Northwestern, but I mean, I called it his own personal Rumspringa, whatever. It's but other than that, when people challenged him in ways that would challenge a center fielder, he was there. This didn't happen a ton, but it happened enough that makes me think that if you're going to go cover one, he's a pretty good option to be the one.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to see more man-to-man. I think that they're still going to primarily be a zone team because you have to do that. You have to be crazy. You have to be bringing guys from unexpected positions because otherwise RPOs are just going to eat you up all day.
Yeah.
So you just can't run a predictable defense anymore. And so I expect that there's going to be a whole lot of different coverages. Maybe they will work in more man because it does make more sense this year, but that's still going to be just one part of a very large toolbox.
Can I give a quick special teams thing that my opinion was changed of? Because this was, I wasn't writing the special teams piece, but because Barrett was included in the linebackers, I was just looking at his body of work over his career. I did not realize how many fakes he's pulled off at Michigan.
Yeah.
I've got him for 3 fake punts, 2 where he took the snap as the up back and just plunged up the middle, 1 passing it to Dax against Army, and he had the pass on the kick last year to AJ Henning. And he had that one, it wasn't a fake, but where he takes the sort of pooch kick against Minnesota and runs for like 60 yards on a return all the way down to like the 10 in the COVID season. Like that's 5 memorable return or fakes or that sort of thing. Like
in very non-memorable games.
Yes.
That's the thing. Barrett's like special teams heroics are great, and then it's like, which game was that? Oh yeah, Maryland. Like who remembers a Maryland game?
Well, yeah, and similarly, you have Cornelius Johnson, who's taken on the Walker thing, where he's just the wide receiver who blocks punts.
I think we have to call it the Khaleke Hudson job until somebody else gets anywhere near Khaleke Hudson's ability as a punt blocker. But yeah.
What was Walker's first name? Wide receiver
Marquise.
Yeah. He blocked like 4 or 5 punts one year, so I think you can.
Yeah, I know, but I think that we officially handed that over to Khaleke because he got to like 7. So yeah.
All right. Do we have any more takes before we sign off, guys? What is burning a hole in your chest that you just need to get out there?
I don't think we're gonna lose until Columbus. I mean,
oh boy,
weird things happen. It's college football. I know. Nebraska, Penn State.
Nebraska's gonna be a 3-point game. That's what Nebraska does. How about you, Brian? Anything burning out of your chest other than your Tulane shirt?
Burning out of my chest? Yeah. Well, I feel like it'll be a good season.
Sounds
That's
good.
Weird.
All right.
Boris is a mayor and a land surveyor with plans of his own. He hates a Ruska, he hates a vodka, bandit from his home. He hates a Ruska, vodka, he never drank a single drop. He hates a Ruska,